All right, back in the basement again today to talk quickly about why I switched from my Rogue Monster Landmine to the Kleva Built Adroit Landmine 2.0. Now, I've had this Rogue one for probably about 5 or 6 years. I like it a lot, and I still do like it a lot. I initially picked this up when we were renting a house, and I was training out of a garage, was limited on space, needed something with a lot of versatility, took up a little footprint. Rogue Landmine was it. It's really great. Check out my video review of it in the description box below if you're interested. And I just haven't found anything better to replace this with since then. Now, interestingly enough, with this Kleva Built one, the 2.0 that I am now replacing the Rogue one with, I actually had the Kleva Built 1.0, and it just wasn't enough for me to replace my Rogue. There was 3 main reasons why. Number 1 was the fact that it actually bolted onto the rack using 2 full-on 1-inch bolts, which was too bulky in my opinion, and with a landmine, I think it's more versatile if you're able to move this easily, so it was not easily moved. Also, the range of motion in the design just wasn't as much as the Rogue one, so a little bit limited in range of motion, didn't like that. And last, and probably least in this case, is just the aesthetics. It looked similar in design, but it was this grayish color, bronzish color. It just didn't match with what I was going for, and for that reason, it never made it full-time on my rack. But here we are, later on, new version out, new friends coming, old friends leaving. So at the time of this video, someone's coming to get this landmine. That's why I need to hurry up and just make this so it's done and it can stop collecting dust in my corner. But those 3 main things that I didn't like about the first Kleva Built landmine were actually fixed and addressed in the V2. So number 1, the way that this attaches to a rack is just using a single connection point. And in this case, you can do it with your hands, which is nice. This thing screws off very easily. Put it wherever you want in your rack and you attach it, and it is good to go hand tightened, which means if you want to move it, it's very easy to do. I will say, as I'm talking about the point where it attaches right now, Kleva Built has actually gone and done everyone a solid by making this sleeve removable and having a 5/8 inch connection pin beneath it. So depending on what kind of rack you have, or if you upgrade your rack, change your rack, downgrade your rack, why would you ever do that? You can still use this same piece of equipment by just removing or adding the sleeve that comes standard, which is really nice. Another thing was nice is they improved the range of motion on this by allowing some more pivoting points, so you get a full range of motion comparable to what you get on the Rogue. But again, you do so, and in this case, at a much lower footprint and heft. So this is big and beefy, which at the time is really nice, but if you don't use your landmine all the time, or when you're not using it, it just kind of takes up space on the floor and it gets in the way. This is not the case with this because it takes up less space. And one of the things that you can get with it is this secondary attachment, which is a magnet, which allows you to mount this in either a vertical or horizontal fashion. So very nice feature with that. Gets it up and out of the way, and you can kind of set it and forget it if you will. Now, lastly, the aesthetics on this remain somewhat similar, minus the way that this attaches and the magnet thing that I just showed you, but this is in a black finish, which obviously for me matches really, really well with the rest of my aesthetics. Now, that being said, those are the points that they addressed, which made me come over to the Kleva Built side, but it's not all that this offers over the Rogue. So one of the things I really like about this, which I'm big on, is protecting your equipment. So on the inside, there's a polycarbonate sleeve. So your sleeve's always gonna be protected. So a lot of people like to use, beater barbells for landmine work because they don't wanna damage their bar. In this case, it'll be nice and protected. And they've teamed up with my friends over at AbMat to include an AbMat barbell pillow on the inside. Think of it like a little foam disc so that when you're putting your bar in here, it has a nice soft cushion. And as dumb as that sounds, I actually really like these barbell pillows. In fact, I think I own something like 20 of them, and I put them in all of my vertical bar storage throughout the course of my gym. So it's just a nice thing that is added on here. So the net of it is this fixes all the problems I had with the initial and does everything the Rogue was doing for me that I liked, albeit in a smaller footprint, and is put away a little bit easier and a little bit more unique in the fact that this thing looks like it came off of like the Millennium Falcon or something like that. I just really like the design aesthetic, especially now that it's in black. So I like that a lot. And they're both similarly priced depending on what kind of build out you get, meaning that you don't have to get this little magnet, but I think it adds like 10 bucks to the cost. There's also different post options if you're going to do this in a freestanding landmine work. So like a stack of plates, for example, versus putting it on the rack. The pricing may change, but it's negligible to the point where, again, I like this and this will be living on my rack going forward. Now, that being said, there are some things that I think could be improved. I've already mentioned the V1, if you will, was not my cup of tea. The V2, while it's very good in my opinion, there are some slight areas that they could potentially improve upon. Number one is just the way it attaches. So I like the fact that, again, it's a single post that goes in and it uses this hand-tightened cog, if you will, or screw. But when you compare it to what you're coming from with the Rogue, which gives you a knurled monster nut, which eventually, should have planned this video better, I'm sorry in advance. It's just a night and day difference between this and this. Now I get it that this is sleek. This is more than likely 100% positive this is going to be cheaper than this. I just think that this could be improved in some fashion, especially for someone like me with bigger hands. If I'm really cranking this down and it's on a rack and I'm trying to get in there and get my fingers, it's tough to do. So there's not a lot to grip onto. So if this was bigger, maybe a little bit more textured, something, I just think that this piece could be improved a little bit and probably at a minimal cost to Kleva and team. Speaking of the way that this attaches, if you take a look at the magnet, this is probably my least favorite thing about it is the way that this attaches, which is via a bolt. And again, I get why they did certain design pieces here. So this could work with 1 inch and 5/8 inch rack. But this just kind of looks off to me. Everything else in this setup is very high quality feeling, very nice to touch. This is literally just a bolt you could get at like Home Depot, it looks like, with just, again, a metal washer, which is silver or zinc or whatever finish this is, where everything else is kind of like this black finish. So I would love to see some sort of application where you get something like this on here instead, whether it's a cover, cap, something that, number one, looks better, because this, again, just looks a little bit off in the way you attach it. But also, if you're going to be moving your landmine, which you probably will, you may also consider moving your magnet. But in the case here, there's nothing to really grab onto. So what I end up doing is basically just kind of pinching the head of this bolt and twisting the magnet piece on to tighten it when I'm putting it on the rack. But that leaves me not being able to get it very tight. And also just taking it off is also not very enjoyable of an experience. So I'd love to see literally just take this and make a cap and put it on there and we're good to go. But other than that, like I said, I really like this landmine so much so, in fact, that this has now been sold and someone's probably gonna come pick it up here in the next 20 minutes or so. So sorry you guys missed out, but hopefully that gives you some insight into why I chose to go with the Adroit 2.0. But if you have any questions I missed, let me know in the comment section below. I'm also going to link my friend, the Kurt Locker's channel, who did a much more thorough review of the Adroit landmine. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.